That's what you can say about life, right?
Right, exactly. Hi, Jay. Hey, Jeff.
Not today. For the next one, please.
Sarah, I want to catch up with you and hear the update.
Sure.
Jay, I hope to see you soon. Not this week, but next week, right? God willing. Good.
We're on vacation.
I love when people on Zoom come to town and come off the screen. Very excited. Because Jay's about to be traveling, coming off the screen into life. I mean, obviously he's in life right now. Poop, 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 right? Hi, Marla. I was just asking about you. How's everyone? Marla wants to know how's everybody.
Thank God.
Thank God. Elliot, I bet you didn't say that before you came to Romemu. Would you just answer a question? Thank God.
No.
See what Romemu does to you?
Exactly.
Faith, right there, in action. How are you? Thank God. But I want to know how you are. What do you mean, thank God?
Thank God I'm okay.
Thank God. All right. All right. What we're going to see today, it's more complicated than that. All right. Who's this? Oh, hi, Bob. Good to see you. Your face. You'll be live. Oh, good. Oh, good, Beth. Paul from Israel. Oh, my God. Yes.
Shalom, shalom.
And then it says Pink March by your name. I'm trying to interpret that.
That's my Ivrit class level.
Oh, I thought it had something to do with pride, but no. Pink, pride, a march, put it all together, and none of it makes sense. All right, so today is Pride Shabbat, and we're learning the Parsha in honor of Pride Shabbat, and hopefully will be connections to Pride. And I look, I invite everybody to join me in making those connections. Good morning. All right, I think we're ready. Let's see. We're ready for the Torah blessing, Caroline. Okay, everybody in cacophony. Baruch you, divine source of the universe, who has issued all kinds of instructions and sanctified us by those instructions and instructed us to soak in your divine wisdom. Okay, so we're moving into Shlach, which is a big, dramatic, and disturbing story. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. What's wrong? Oh, you mean disturbing? Disturbing. Oh, you know what? Let's get Galilee. Can we do that? Who's tech savvy and can manage this so I don't have to deal with it? I mean, it's not that hard. I just want it on gallery. I think it's on the right. Thank you so much. Yeah. Yeah. That mouse is very wonky. So, and the sin of the spies, right, results in the people of Israel wandering around the desert for another 38 years. So instead of going straight to the promised land, there is a big, deep, thank you. Oh, I want those people to be bigger.
Yeah. I see your problem.
You see my problem? Yeah, thank you so much. Hi, Joe.
There you go.
Hi, everybody. We just started. So it's a big, big problem, the sin of the spies. And we're going to ask, what is the nature of that sin? And what is it, of course, teach us? Remember, we're people on Zoom hear everything in the room. So let's just try to be as much as possible on one page in one room. On screen and in the room is somehow one. So, what do we learn from the sin of the spies? And what's the invitation to the spies? And what invitation did they decline? Right? What were they invited to do? And what opportunity did they pass on? And what does any of this have to do with pride, and also have to do with seats? Because the commandment to wear tzitzit fringes, right, on our garments, happens at the end of this parsha. And some of the same language is used as that of the spies, who are not actually referred to as spies in this parsha, or scouts, for scouting the land. Okay, so that's where we're going to share my post-disabled participant screen sharing. Caroline, how could you?
Wait, it's not letting you share the screen? That's weird.
Yep, I'm
Let me-
disabled.
1 second. You try again now.
That seems to be working. There we go.
There we go. Sorry about that. Sorry, that's on me. I should have made you co-host immediately. That's on
It's
me.
okay, don't worry about it. Okay, so I call this fringe consciousness. What does it mean to see with eyes of faith for Pride Shabbat? So here we are at the beginning of the Parsha. Vayidaber Adonai el Moshe lemor. So the Lord spoke to Moses saying, Shlach lecha, send, but really here's it says send men to scout the land, but send for you, right? It's kind of resonant with Lech lecha, God's words to Abraham back in Genesis 12. Shlach lecha anashim, send for you men. We're going to look at that too. But if it were women, what would have happened if it were women? Would it have been different? Vayaturu et Eretz Canaan asher ani noten livnei Yisrael. You shall scout, and we'll sort of look more deeply into that word in a minute. The land of Canaan that I am giving to the children of Israel. Ish echad lemate avotav. Send one man from each of their ancestral tribes. Tishlahu kol nashim. Kol nasi by him. Each one a chieftain among them, or a prince. So this notion of royalty is being introduced right from the beginning, right? So that these are not just like some schleppers. These are men of status and of stature, right? Send the important guys. Vayishlach otam Moshe mimidbar paran al pi Adonai. So Moses sent them by the word or command of God in the wilderness of Paran. Kulam anashim rashe b'nei Israel hema. All the men being leaders of the Israelites. So there's a lot of emphasis on status and stature. Don't be afraid. Okay, so let's look into this word tour or la tour, to scout out. What does it mean, or what's the semantic range of this word? So we have here to seek, search out, spy out, explore. But it doesn't seem to be, there's a separate word for spies, miraglim or liragel. It doesn't seem to be narrowly spy out. It seems to mean many more things. And we'll look at an interesting use of it in the book of Deuteronomy in a moment. To seek out, select, find out how to do something. Spy out, explore, explorer, spies, go about, merchant, trader, and in the hipil, causative, to make a search, make a reconnaissance. And then there's some interesting cognates in ancient Near Eastern languages. For instance, in Assyrian, the cognate means to turn about, back. Also merciful, that's interesting. I'm not exactly sure what the connection is, but one can also always make connections, go about and go between. Now look at this use in the word in the book of Deuteronomy. So, "Ubadavar hazeh einchem ma'aninim ba'Adonai Elohechem," and in this thing you have not believed in God your Lord, or Adonai your God. Haholech lifnechem baderech latur lachem makom hanotchem, who goes out before you on your journeys to scout the place where you are to encamp, right? Or to sort of maybe carve out a path for you so that you have space. Ba'esh laila l'otchem ba'derech asher telchu ba uba'anan yomam. In fire by night and cloud by day, in order to guide you on the routes you are to follow. So again, these men of stature, these princes, are commanded to go scout, explore, create a path, right? And this whole project is pivotal because it's the project of implementing God's promise. Okay. No, people on screen hear the people out on the street. They're
Should I
participating.
close the window?
I think it's gonna be hot. I closed the air conditioner because it was too noisy, but I think this noise might be better. But thank you. Okay, so let's see what happens. Now we're in source 4. Vayomer Alehem. And Moshe said to when Moses sent them to scout the land of Canaan, he said to them, Alu ze banegev ba'alitem etahar. Go up there into the Negev and go into the hill country. So there's a sense of going up. And it's interesting because when the children of Israel, the family of Israel at the end of Genesis go to Egypt, there's this downward motion, right? Down, down, down. They go down to Egypt. And that's a word that's used repeatedly for going to Egypt. And when they're going to the land of the promised land, they're going up, up, up. And you're going to see the land. So this concept of seeing is really crucial throughout this whole parsha. Mahi, what is it? The et ha'am. So that's really interesting. In fact, Asher Chaim and I had a little chavruta this week, and Asher Chaim said, and correct me, Asher Chaim, if I'm not quite getting the force of your point correctly, like Moshe's sending them on a reconnaissance, right, mission, which he's leaving open-ended and asking all these questions. And maybe if it wasn't so open-ended, they wouldn't have gotten into the trouble they got into. Is that correct, Asher Chaim? Yes. Okay, good. And I'm going to deal with that question in a minute. So what is this land? And this people that live upon it, settled upon it, are they strong? Hu harafeh hama'at hu imrav. Is the country in which they dwell good or bad, or the towns they live in? Oh, I'm sorry, I'm not up to that yet. Are the people who dwell in it strong or weak, few or many? Umeh ha'aretz asher yoshev ba hatovahi. And what is this land in which they dwell? Is it good? Imra'ah, is it bad? Uma ha'arim asher hu yoshev bahena habamachanim im b'mitzarim. Are the towns they live in open or fortified? Umeh ha'aretz hashmenahi im razah. And this land, is it fat? Is it thin? And remember, those words were essential to Pharaoh's dreams, right? The sense of being fat or thin and abundance and deprivation. Hayesh ba'etz im ayin. Is it wooded or not? Okay, so far, really open-ended questions. Is it good or bad? Are they strong or weak, few or many, open or fortified? Like, there's this real spirit of not knowing, right? I don't know. Go find out. What is it? And as we know, if we look at reality, it's many things. It's not one thing. So these are open-ended questions, right? Is it this or that, this or that? But then at the end of those open-ended questions, what happens is Moshe says, the hit chazaktem. The hit chazaktam. Ulekachtem mipri haaretz. So strengthen yourselves and take from the fruit of the land. So whatever it is, at the end of this is what you need to do, right? You're going to see the goodness, you're going to see the badness, you're going to see the dangers, you're going to see, what gives you courage. But whatever it is, strengthen yourselves, fortify yourselves, and take from the fruit of the land. And then, right, the narrator tells us, V'hayamim yimei bipurei anadim. Now, it happened to be the season of the first ripe. So that sort of gives some sense of reality to Moshe's injunction. Now, if you think about it, right, we're always before a mixed reality, right? There's always good and bad and despair and hope, and we see all kinds of things. And yet, at the end of it, Moshe is saying, but take the good for yourself, right? Moshe is not telling them if it's good or bad. Moshe is saying, strengthen for yourself and take the good, no matter what you see. Okay, so now we have some comments. Hold on, let me stop my shirt. Are you saying your hands up?
Wendy.
Oh, Wendy. Okay, hold on. No, Wendy, not.
Okay.
No, okay, so only people online for this moment. Okay, Beth and Jay.
Shabbat shalom. I don't see these questions as being open-ended so much as I see them being that Moshe is presenting them with dichotomies or binaries. And they certainly come back reporting in binaries when they say, yes, it's a land flowing with milk and honey, and it's a land that devours its people. So he's sort of presaging the response he's going to get out of them. Geberti.
Not necessarily. He's not determining the response because they can go to one side of the binary or the other. And the question is, are these binaries, or are they what are referred to as merism, which is sort of two sides of a pole that represent the range. So it's hard to tell which one they are. But no matter what, they're still open-ended questions, even if he's presenting binaries. Okay, Jay.
I actually took my hand down because Beth basically said what I was going to say, but I want to push it given your reaction. I think
well, I'm so surprised, Jay. I'm so surprised. Do you want to push it? No.
Binaries are either or. There's no middle ground. So he's already setting them up to see extremes. And also, if you want to talk about binaries, it's a nice connection to Pride Shabbat there, in terms of ignoring middle grounds and things that are not either or and are not zero-sum games.
Nice. Beautiful. Love that connection.
Right, thank you. But also, let's suppose that it is open-ended, and it seemed, it seemed as if from your comments with Asher Chaim that might be a bad thing. But my view is you're sending your
not for me. Asher Chaim
thought
it was a setup for the people.
For all the complications, right.
For me, I felt like if they can't answer these questions, they're not ready to go into the promised land.
Right. Or another way to look at it is you're sending your top people, you're sending your leaders. And if they can't deal with the open-endedness and bring back good, accurate reports, then you may not be ready.
Or if they can't bring back reports that will lead the people forward instead of backwards. I don't think it's so much about accuracy, because accuracy could be anything. If you look at any reality, there are an infinite number of possibilities. Yeah. So how can you sort of come up with a conclusion that helps people go forward?
But the histrionics of grasshoppers and giants and all that was in the reporting. That wasn't in the reaction of the people, right?
Let's get there. We're not there yet.
Okay,
hold on. All right. I see a lot of hands, so I'm going to ask people to be quick because we've got a lot of juicy texts to jump into. Okay, Norm, you had your hand up. Yeah.
The order of questions, why is strong or weak first?
Why what?
The order of the questions, why is strong to me or weak is like martial, physical, rather. One of them he has first is the land, rich. I don't understand the order of the question. It's
like, a great question.
It's like the ingredients in soda, like high corn fructose is the first, so it's like, why is it that way?
Hold on one second. I think the strength of the people is everything for them, because they're going to need to take over the land through a military conquest. So the first question is, can we take over this land?
Right, it's like,
no.
They can't even get to the other questions.
Yes, exactly. They can't even get to the other questions. That's right. If they don't answer that question first. Right, yeah.
But I had a question about whether they've been prepared properly, just thinking about reconnaissance
Yeah.
and say a wartime underground. The team you send out has to really be a working team. It's kind of a life and death situation. This is just off the top of my head. So you've arranged this group, but do they really know one another? Do they understand? Have they
Great,
decided
great
on
question. I have no idea.
what are we looking for
Right,
exactly as a
right,
team?
Right.
I think that's problematic.
Well,
I'm making this assumption. Of course.
yes, you're making me, but I think that's a great question. Had they been set up for success? And I think that Beth and Jay are also pointing to that when they say that Moshe has presented them with binaries. And I'm saying, even
Yeah.
if they're binaries, there's still questions.
Right.
Okay, Paul.
Shabbat shalom. I have a question for you. Because this morning when I was in my Beit Knesset some hours ago, I was reading in a copy of the Steinsaltz Chumash, and they're saying there that in Devarim, in Deuteronomy, that this account is given very differently. That actually it was the people who were asking for this information, and
Correct.
Steinholtz says that it's and Steinholtz bases it on two references to Rashi, saying that it was likely that the people initiated the plan, and that then Moshe brought that to God and said, "Hey, I think we should do this because the people want this scouting done."
Yeah. So they're two different accounts and they conflict, as many accounts do in Deuteronomy compared to the rest of the Torah in the retelling. So the question is this a story about sort of God testing the people? Are they ready to go into the promised land? Or is this the people needing assurances about the land that they're going into? So they're two different tales.
Very, very different. Yeah.
They are. Okay, I'm going to go
So
for Okay. So this is the people coming back, right? And this is what they say. Vayisapru lo, vayamru vanu el haaretz asher shalachthanu, v'gam savat chalav udvashi v'zeh priya. So they come back and they say to Moshe, we came to the land that you sent us to, and it does, you're right, it does indeed flow with milk and honey, and this is its fruit. So they took up the fruit, right? And in fact, it says that it took, I forget how many, like 4 men to carry a branch of grapes. Right? So it was a huge, huge branch of grapes, which, shows you that the land is really full of goodness and a sense of fertility and possibility as well. And then they say something really interesting. I think this word is really important. They say, Ephes ki az ha'am hayoshev ba'aretz v'ha'arim b'tzurot u'gdolot ma'od v'gam yilidei ha'anak Yerushalayim. However, and however can be either seen as however or zero, nothing. The people who inhabit the country are powerful, and the cities are fortified and very large. Moreover, we saw the Anakites there, the very large men, or the giants. So this zero word could be saying, like, what we saw there is actually making our enterprise null and void, right? We don't have the hope that it would take to get us into the promised land. Okay. And then even worse, Amalek Yoshev be'eretz hanegev. Who's Amalek? Right? It's the representation of evil in the Bible, or the people that represent evil more than any other people. And they often show up, maybe always, at moments of great transition, like after the people cross the Reed Sea and come into the wilderness. Right? When the people are feeling vulnerable, Amalek comes up, and also at moments of loss of faith. Oh, I'm sorry, Jesse. I forgot about you. Did you have a question before? No? Oh, I thought you did. Okay. Oh, you said Wendy did. But Wendy did. Got it. Okay. Okay. Got it. Amalek Yoshev Ba'aretz Hanegev Hachiti Vayivusi Ve'emori Yoshev Bahar HaKanani V'HaKanani Yoshev Al Yam V'Al Yad HaYarden. Amalekites dwell in the Negev region. Hittites, Jebusites, Amorites inhabit the hill country, and Canaanites dwell by the sea and along the Jordan. So they were given either this these binaries or these open-ended questions, depending on how you read the previous passage. And what they see mostly, I mean, they admit, right? It's like, admittedly, yeah, there's something good there, but there are enemies that are more powerful than us all over the place. Right. Vayahas Kalev et ha'am el Moshe, vayomer alo na'aleh v'yarashnu otah ki yachol nuchala. But Caleb hushed the people before Moshe and said, "Let us by all means go up, and we shall gain possession of it, for we shall surely overcome it." But the Hebrew is so much more beautiful and plain, because we can. Because, right, Kiyachol, can, and then we can do it. Right, just very simple. We can do it. Anashim asher alu imo amru, and the people, the men that went up with him, said, "Lo nuchal." Exactly the opposite. No, we can't. We can't go up. Lo nuchal alot el ha'am, to the nation. Ki chazak hu mimenu, because it is stronger. So there's this sense of possibility and canness pitted against no can do. Can't do it. And what's interesting is they saw the same thing, right? They went together. And yet their vision of the same thing was not the same vision. And their conclusions, therefore, were not the same. Lanashim asher alu imo amru, lo nuchal la'alot am. Oh, I'm sorry. I said that. Vayotziu dibat haaretz. And they spread calumnies about the land, right? It's like a lashon hara. It's an evil speech about the land. Asher taru ota, that they scouted out. El b'nei Israel lemor, to the rest of the people, to the children of Israel, saying, Haaretz asher avarnu va latur ota, eretz ochelet yoshveha. And they said to the children of Israel that the land that we passed over to scout out, it is a land that consumes its inhabitants. And if you remember, at other times they see God as a fire that consumes. Like they are terrified of being consumed. And all the people that live there are people of midot, are stronger than we, are people of stature, right? So somehow they see that they are seeing themselves as lesser, which becomes very clear in the next verse. B'sham ra'inu et hanephilim b'nei anak. And there we saw the Nephilim, who are the children of the giant people. B'nei min hanephilim. V'nehi b'einenu kachagavim. And we look like grasshoppers to ourselves. V'chen hayinu b'einehem. And so we must have looked to them. So again, this is all about vision. And it's so contemporary in the sense that it's also about how they saw themselves. And how did they see themselves in the face of this? As grasshoppers. Right? They saw themselves as small and not rooted and kind of hopping around, ready to be squashed. So Daniel, I'm going to call on you in a minute. I just want to look at a few things about grasshoppers. So Rashi says, what?
Grasshopper consciousness.
Yeah. V'chen hayinu be'einehem shamanu omrim zela zeh nimalim yesh b'kramim kanashim. And we heard them say to one another, "There are ants in the vineyard that look like human beings." So Rashi's really making it very concrete. And then in the Midrash of Tanhuma, really a beautiful, beautiful Midrash. Amru v'nehi be'einenu kagavim. And in our own eyes, we were like, Amar HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and God, holy blessed be they, said, B'tarti aleha. I forgave them for that remark. Ella, b'chen, in other words, there were two remarks. The first one's okay. Ella, but the one when they said V'chen hayinu be'enehem, and so were we in their eyes. Makpirani, I'm very strict about the second one. I don't like that second one. V'chi yodim hayitem ma asiti v'chen be'enehem. And how did you know what I did, with you in their eyes? Mi yomar lachem shelo hayitem be'enehem kim malachim. Who would say that they were not like angels in their eyes? Do you know what I made you in their eyes? But we always assume how other people are judging us. And God's saying, you may be grasshoppers in your own eyes, but not in their eyes. You don't know what they're thinking. And they're saying we were grasshoppers in their eyes. And you can imagine, and probably we all know at one moment or another, when we feel something like grasshoppers and we imagine we look like that in other people's eyes, and how that freezes us from action, from going forward, right? From perhaps carving out a path, right? From creating a future for ourselves. Okay, Daniel, you're on.
Shabbat shalom. Excuse me. Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
I'd like to pick up on two things you mentioned and ask one thing, which is, I think this is a good illustration of the kind of information disorders that we have today, which is competing narratives about some facts or things which are essentially should be the same. And depending on who looks at it, they think their narrative is the true one and the other one is not, right? But there are a couple of techniques here which are also common, like projecting on others, like you just pointed out, projecting on others what you feel. So in some sense, it's also a kind of manipulation to make people identify or choose that narrative rather than the other one. But the thing that caught my attention was there's this reference about dibah, right? Like Lashon Hara, which is already, in my view, a value judgment, because it is assuming that that narrative is wrong or untrue. And I'm not sure who's attributing that value judgment to the narrative, right? Because if it was Kalev saying it, fine. I say, yeah, this is fake news. You guys are not saying it the way it is. But this, I don't understand it as being said by
No, it's not. It's a narrator comment.
Right. So that means there's an implicit already indication of what was the presumably correct one, or the one that should be adopted, right? Which is, we infer that it's Kalev and Yoshua. But so anyway, that's my observation there. And
okay, great. Thank you so much. So let's pick up on what you're saying by asking, like, is one of these interpretations wrong? Is it about being truthful? I'm only calling on people who haven't spoken yet. I'm sorry, I'm only calling on people who haven't spoken yet.
Who was the narrator?
God, of course.
Oh, okay.
Who's the narrator in this particular text?
Well, you just said the narrator is talking.
The narrator, the in this piece of literature, the voice that's functioning as the narrator voice, as opposed to the point of view of one of the characters, group of the characters.
May I?
Yeah, Asher Chaim, and then Jesse. Yeah.
The narrative voice of the Torah is neither God nor Moshe, but rather the Torah looking at God and Moshe and reporting each of them in the third person. It's the I, the voice of the Torah. Dibarti.
Tamati. Tada. Jesse.
I just have a quick question because I feel stuck on when you read in the Hebrew for numbers, you said in the Hebrew, and Moses said, strengthen yourself.
Yeah.
In the English, it's not there, and it feels like that's essential.
In the English,
to the rest
it's
of
and
the
take
story.
pains to bring back. But the hit
It's so
chazak 10 is the root chazak strength in the reflexive. which means strengthen yourselves.
No, that seems so integral to the rest of the story.
It does. It does.
Which is weird. It's not.
I agree. I agree. And I actually think that's an essential here. So is one of these takes on the land true and false? Is that what's at play here? Or is it a different question? Yeah.
This whole story makes no sense to me personally.
Uh-oh.
I mean, I don't know what the years were, but they defeated not obviously with Hashem's help, stretch on, they defeated the greatest army in the world, the known world, which was the Egyptian army, obliterated them. So they're worried about a few tribes that are falling around. I mean, it can't be, it's not like this is a new generation. These people were there. They saw that. They were at Sinai. It doesn't really make any sense.
So that's a great question. So who are these people? These people are the ones who complain through the wilderness. These people are the people who lose faith and seem to have forgotten what happened in Egypt at every turn, right? These people who are the people who still have slave consciousness, which I think ultimately is what this story is about, right? They are not ready to see possibility when they look at the promised land. They're not ready to see promise. Okay, Joe, did you read that? Bob and Tomas, and Nikki, I think you already said something. I'm only calling on people who haven't spoken yet.
I want to respond to the last person who spoke and say, look at the objective situation. These men had not gotten very much food when they were working in Egypt. There was a plan to actually drown all the baby boys. So whatever food was coming to the household was just for the females. So because of that, they actually were shorter than the other people they ran into. So that's the part where they see their weakness. But God sees their strength. He said, despite that, for all those hundreds of years, you worked, you did construction, you're strong, you're clever. What don't you see about yourself?
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you so much. Tomas.
Hey, can you hear me okay?
Good.
Sorry,
Yes.
I couldn't join you in person today. I'm with you in spirit.
Okay. It's good to see you.
Two very quick thoughts. I think it's really significant and lovely that it's grasshoppers, not ants or worms or a creeping thing that creeps upon the earth, because a grasshopper is a leaping thing that leaps away from the earth. And a grasshopper can leap like 50 times its own height. It seems very small and vulnerable, but it actually has, it's right there in the name, right? The hopper. It has this extraordinary capacity to make a leap. You can call it a leap of faith, or you can just call it audacity. But whatever that insect is, you might say it's significant that it's not a crawling or a creeping insect, but it's one with this extraordinary spring-loaded potential. Second, just this whole
what
passage.
significance do you see to that, Tomas? What conclusion do you?
A grasshopper seems like a humble and powerless insect, or very, very small creature.
I see what you're saying.
But right there in the name is this capacity to hop, to make this extraordinary leap.
I see.
And so even unconsciously to describe oneself as a grasshopper is actually to describe oneself as someone with great strength. Yeah, as Beth says in the chat, small but mighty.
Okay.
Just secondarily, it really recalls the passage, "Nothing is but thinking makes it so," which comes from Milton, the great Protestant poet of the British Reformation, in Paradise Lost. And that if you think you will succeed, you will, and if you think you'll fail, you will. If you think, and the next line is, the mind can make a heaven out of hell and a hell out of heaven. So this is Milton maybe reading these texts. But the tricky thing is that Milton puts those lines into the mouth of the devil, into the fallen angel of Lucifer in Paradise Lost. And he really actually wants to, even though it's, he wants to discredit that idea and actually make a case for absolute truth. And it's actually a devilish thought that the world is merely as we perceive it to be. And Milton is making a case for absolute truths that are beyond our subjective perception. And it's our job to find that objective truth despite our subjective limitations. But the idea that you can make a heaven out of a hell or a hell out of a heaven just by how you see it, even though it's a devilish thought, it's a strangely useful one too. Okay, thanks.
It's useful, and I think it has its limitations. But I think both Caleb and Joshua and the rest of the people both have a sense of reality, right? It's sort of like it's the conclusion that's the problem, right? It's like seeing a range of possibilities and drawing one strand out and not taking strength, right? That word that they were asked to do, behit chazat. Okay, Elliot.
Yeah, no, so that, in this seems to be sort of a message, for, people who are trying to make change in terms of social movements, and, whatever that movement might be, prison reform, whatever, that there's a tendency to see oneself, or to see oneself as powerless. Like how are we going to make change in the face of this enormous power? And to believe that that's the way that those in power see us, and that's the way we see us.
Yeah.
Once you flip that, and this sort of builds on what Tomas was saying, you flip that and you say, actually, we have power, we have strength. Then that makes the change more possible.
Right, and seeing reality as a kind of frozen, unchangeable thing, as opposed to reality as a thing that was created earlier, and now we're calling it static.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, Jamie Aston.
You.
Hi,
An interesting parallel, reading the headlines and after watching the debate the other night, and
oh, please don't read the headline.
Sorry, I know, but it's about the image and rather than the facts. And so you have the spies who are coming in with these grandiose, falsified, huge fears. And then you have, the reckoning, the remembering, okay, wait, we are strong, we are solid, this is, the path that we want to follow. We can't see it yet. We haven't lived that yet. But it is possible if we rise above our current circumstances and go for what our values are. Go for the hope. Go for the future.
Beautiful, Jamie. Thank you. Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's not that the giants aren't there. They are, there are considerable terrors and fears and challenges. And can we find a path?
Right.
And that takes us back to that word latour. Can we detect a path through this?
And the ego could be seen as the devil, the devilish one who is going to inflate our fears and not allow us to see the path.
Yes, beautiful. Okay, I'm going to read the next passage. Ashrakan, you want to take it over? The contagion of despair.
Not take it over, but read, sure. ותסע העדה, ויתנו את קולם, ויבכו העם בלילה ההוא. The entire congregation raised up and gave out their voice, and they wept on that night.
Meaning they believed the 10 spies and not Caleb and Joshua.
ויילונו על משה ועל אהרון כל בני ישראל, and they complained against Moshe and Aharon, all of the children of Israel. Vayomru, and they said, alehem, to them, kol ha'ida, all of the nation, lumatnu be'eres Misraim, o b'midbar hazel lumatnu. If only we had died in Egypt, or in this wilderness, if only we had died. Velama Adonai mevi otanu el haaretz hazot linpol b'charev, nashenu v'tapenu yiyu levaz. Why did Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh bring us to this land to fall by sword? Our women and our children will be despoiled. Halo kov lanu shuv Misraima. There's an exceptional trope here. Would it not have been better for us to return towards Egypt?
So, I'm sorry, did finish that thought. Did you
The
want to say something about the trope?
Halo tov is a darga merchachula. It focuses extra attention there, that's all.
So note that it's not death that they're afraid of, because they're yearning to have died in Egypt and in the wilderness. What they're afraid of, it seems to be, is dying by sword. Right? It's like they're actually craving to go backwards, and even craving to go backwards to some kind of safer death, which is really confusing. Okay, go on.
In an odd way, they're echoing Moshe, because when the people complained about food, he said to God, take me now. If you love me, let me die right now.
Yes, that's right.
Commodore Smith.
It's also the fear of their wives and children being carried off.
It's also the wives and children being carried off, which has a wonderful resonance at this moment. Yes. Yeah, that's right. Okay, go on, Ashavan.
Lavaz is hostages, women and children as hostages. Vayomru ish el ahiv nitnarosh v'nashuva misraima. Man said to his brother, let us get a head who will lead us to return to Mitzrayim. Vayipol Moshe v'Aharon al panehem lifnei kol kahal adat b'nei Yisrael. Moshe and Aharon fell on their faces in the presence of all of the assembly of the community of Bnei Yisrael. Yehoshua bin Nun v'Chalev ben Yefuneh min haktarim et haaretz qar'u bigdehem. And, or however, Yehoshua son of Nun and Kalev son of Yefuneh, of those who had scouted the land, they tore their garments.
Yeah, hold on one second. Could people in the room shut off their phones? Because I hear lots of ringing and dinging. Make sure your phones are.
Vayomru el kol adat b'nei Yisrael lemor, and they said to the whole community of the children of Israel, saying, Haaretz asher avarnu bach laturotah, kova haaretz me'od me'od. They said, the land which we passed through to scout it, it is good, very, very much. Im hafez banu Adonai, ve'hevi otanu el haaretz hazot, unetanach lanu, eretz asher hi zavat halav udvash. If Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh has approves of us, loves us, and brings us to the land, to this land, and gives it to us, it is a land that is flowing with milk and honey. Ach badonai al timrodu, but against Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh do not rebel. V'atem al tir'u et am haaretz ki lachmeinu heim. And you, don't be afraid of the people of the land. They are a piece of cake. They're the stuff we eat. Someone pointed out the literary connection to manna. Sar silam alehem varonai itanu al tiraum. If the shade is removed from over them, manna would dissolve when the sun would hit it. Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh with us, don't be afraid. Vayomru kol aida lirgom otam ba'avanim. And the people, or the community, said to pelt them with stones. Uchvod Adonai nir'a b'ohel moed el kol b'nei Yisrael. Meanwhile, the presence of Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh was visible at the tent of meeting to all of the children of Israel.
So the people who are raising possibility and who want to go forward, those are the people that the children of Israel want to stone. Right? There's something about possibility that can be so frightening, And I don't know if you've experienced this yourself, hi Deborah. Possibility can really be scary. Like we get into this very negative, sort of consciousness because we're shutting out possibilities. Possibilities are scary, and to protect ourselves, we just want to go backwards. And note that Joshua and Caleb are actually grieving, right? They rent their clothes. And the people of Israel want to go backwards to Egypt, which cuts the heart, right, of the very project, like the very divine project of going forward and going towards the promise. But God here is on the side of hope and strength. Okay, so this fabulous piece from the Women's Torah Commentary, Shlach Lecha, commentary on Shlach Lecha that we saw in the beginning. Robin, can I ask you to read this? Number 9.
Rabbi, could you scroll down, please? Thank you.
Sure, sorry, thank you. Here we go.
Send emissaries. A hyperliteral translation of the first 3 words of this verse reads, "Send for yourself men." In his 1602 commentary, the Kli Yakar from Poland claims that while the Israelite men of the wilderness generation hated the land of Israel, the Israelite women loved it. His proof is based on the arguments that the demand of the discontented Israelites, let us head back for Egypt, represents the feeling of all the men, while give us a holding in the land of Israel among our father's kinsmen, although formerly attributed to the daughters of, that guy. Actually represents the feelings of all the women. Based on these generalizations, the Kli Yakar claims that if God had chosen the scouts, God would have selected female scouts who loved the land in order to ensure a positive report. Instead, when Moses was given permission to choose the scouts for yourself, he made the tactical error of sending men instead.
There's a piece of commentary that you can imagine I am partial to. But it's true. The only Israelite voice in the whole book of Numbers that wants to go forward are the daughters of Slothai. Right? The men, again and again, let us go back to Egypt, or they're crying, or they're flipping out. But the women, we want a stake in the land. Okay. Marla, can you read the next passage? In that same box. Number 9, the courage to create an existential psychologist from the last century, Rollo.
We are called upon to do something new, to confront a no man's land, to push into a forest where there are no well-worn paths. And
There should be well-worn paths.
Okay. And from which no one has returned to guide us. That is what existentialists call the anxiety of nothingness. To live into the future means to leap into the unknown, and this requires a degree of courage for which there is no immediate precedent and which few people realize. If you do not express your own original ideas, if you do not listen to your own being, you will have betrayed yourself. Also, you will have betrayed our community in failing to make a contribution to the whole.
So that feels so apt, a sort of, existential psychological way of describing what's happening in this parsha and in this book. Jesse, do you want to read the next one? Failure of self-love and respect.
The sin of the spies grows from their failure of self-love and self-respect. As long as we see ourselves merely as grasshoppers up against giants, we will set ourselves up for failure. If we want to create anything new and to enter into the promised land, then we have no choice but to leap into the unknown, to believe in ourselves, and to trust in God's faith in us. This voice of optimism and hope is what separates Joshua and Caleb from the other scouts. This is what, in spite of a long history filled with good reasons to see ourselves as grasshoppers and to give up, has enabled the Jewish people to continue and to thrive.
Beautiful. Thank you. So what happens is even God sort of gives up on the people, right? God also moves into despair. And God says, if you see in the next verse, right, in the next passage, number 10, how long will they hate me? Right? Why do they hate me? And until when will they have no faith in me? And all the signs that I have performed in their midst. This is Rob's question, right? I did all these, all these miracles, I gave them all these signs, and why aren't they believing in me, right? Akenu badever v'orishenu. I will strike them with pestilence and disown them. I'll make of you a nation far more numerous than they. So God does this again and again. God gives up, and God wants to make Moshe, right, kill everybody else and make Moshe into the one person who will sort of spawn a brand new nation. And God did this with Noah right back in Genesis, when God gave up on humanity. Okay, let's start with one guy and see if we can create a whole new story. And Moshe plays his characteristic role with stepping in saying, God, maybe you could look at this a little bit differently. Vayomer Moshe Adonai v'sham'u Mitzrayim ke'elita b'kochacha et ha'am hazeh mikirbo. Moses said to Adonai, when the Egyptians, from whose midst you brought up this people in your midst, hear in your might, hear the news, right? When they hear that you've destroyed all of them. V'amru el yoshev ha'aretz hazot sham'u ki ata Adonai b'ker ba'am ha'am hazeh asher ayin ba'ayin nir'ah ata Adonai ba'anancha omed alehem va'amud anan ha'olech l'pneim Yomam uva'amud eish laila. They will tell it to the inhabitants of their land. Now they have heard that you, Adonai, are in the midst of this people, that you, Adonai, appear in plain sight when your cloud rests over them, when you go before them in a pillar of cloud by day and in a pillar of fire by night. So Moshe is appealing to God's sense of public relations, right? What do the Egyptians know about God, right? The Egyptians know that God has liberated God's people, and God is leading them through the wilderness with all these beautiful and powerful signs. The Heimata et ha'am hazeh ki'ish echad v'amru hagoyim asher sham'u et shema'cha lemor. If then you slay this people wholesale, the nations who have heard your fame will say, Yibolti yecholet Adonai. It must be because Adonai couldn't. It's that word again. I can, we can't. Adonai could not. Adonai did not have the capacity. Adonai was powerless to bring that people to the land, promise them on oath that that God slaughtered them in the wilderness. Therefore I pray, let my Lord's forbearance be great. More. As you said back in Exodus, right? Adonai orach apayim barav chesed. God is slow to anger and abounding in kindness, noseh avon, forgiving iniquity or sin, bafasha. V'nakeh lo yinakeh pakod avon avot albanim al shalishim v'al ribbeim, forgiving iniquity and transgression, yet not remitting all punishment, but visiting the iniquity of parents upon children from the third and fourth generation. So why is this last note helpful? Right, this came up in Exodus when God did not slay all God's people in one fell swoop after the sin of the golden calf. Like instead of killing everybody once, distribute the sin over generations and the punishment over generations, which is actually an improvement for God, right? It's not killing everybody once. It's like, okay, you're going to carry this and your children are going to carry this and the next generation is going to carry this. Okay.
It's horrible.
It is horrible, Nikki. And have you ever noticed that that's kind of the way it is? Like that parents actually, you can say sin or trauma or whatever it is, transmit their stuff. Marla will tell me, we'll back this up in a second. Psychologist to my right. Parents transmit their stuff to the next generation, who then transmit their stuff to the next generation. It's a mechanism that here is sort of articulated in terms of sin, but we can look at it in terms of psychology or just the way humanity is over generations.
There's a poem by Philip Larkin about that, which called, this be the verse. I'm not going to cite it here because it has a profanity.
Okay.
But
I'd love to read it. Will you send it to me?
yes.
Okay, good. All right.
And then you can decide whether to share it with
Maybe I'll do it with like, yeah, I'll substitute them. Okay.
No, you got to quote the words.
Okay. Marlo hasn't spoken. Jesse, I'm trying not to take people who have spoken already. I'm sorry. Okay, Marlo.
You know, I'm thinking about transmitted trauma, but I'm also thinking about the question of faith and why the Israelites can't believe it after things happen.
Yeah,
it's like
back to Bob's question.
Both faith and trauma. It just, these things just keep happening, and it's a continual challenge. It's a challenge to cope with generational trauma, and it seems like to have faith is always going to be an ongoing battle, but that's just the way that it is in life. Yes. That things unhinge us and moor us, things happen that are terrible.
Right.
As individuals or as a people. Yeah. And so we always have to go back and renew faith.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you're a traumatized people, then it's almost impossible to see possibility. Right? Because possibility is the thing that can expose you to more trauma and more vulnerability. Okay, Alex.
So when I studied this years ago,
yeah,
this was really a test of faith. And the concept was that so faith is a currency of heaven, and intellect or knowledge is the currency of the earth. Hashem was basically testing them, saying, by the way, you cannot do this by yourself, but through faith you can unlock heaven.
Yeah, it's not about what they can do by themselves.
No, it's really about it's a test for faith, and that through Hashem you can actually unlock heaven.
Beautiful.
Right?
Beautiful.
That the currency of heaven is faith. And then they took it on their own agency.
Yeah.
Through that, they lost the key.
Yeah, because their own agency wasn't quite enough to get them.
It's not about your inner core strength, but with Hashem, you can unlock that currency of heaven, or the key to heaven.
I think that's really beautiful, Alex, and it presents the question of what about those who don't have a connection with God? You don't have to answer that now, but it's, what does that mean to rely? Maybe it's the power, and I think Elliot was getting at this, the power of the collective, or the power of, or some faith in, the arc of history bends towards justice. Yeah. What's the larger thing that we're relying on? So, and I'm going to go right from Alex's point, which brings us to the next passage, number 11, because the ritual commandment at the end of this parsha has everything to do with this story, even though it doesn't immediately follow the story. There's a few things in between. So let's see, what this ritual is and what it has to do with what happened. Ashwatan, can you continue to read? Numbers 15. You see it, Ashwatan?
Daber?
Yeah.
דבר אל בני ישראל ואמרת להם ועשו להם ציצית על כנפי בגדיהם לדורותם ונתנו על ציצית הכנף פתיל תכלת. Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh said to Moshe, tell the people of Israel, speak to them and say these words, that they may make for themselves tzitzit, fringes, on the corners of their garments for their generations, and they shall place on the tzitzit of the fringe a thread of techelet, royal purple. והיה לכם לציצית וראיתם אותו וזכרתם את כל מצוות אדוני ועשיתם אותם. They shall be for you as tzitzit. You shall see them and remember all of the commandments of Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh and perform them. ולא תטורו אחרי לבבכם ואחרי עיניכם אשר אתם זונים אחריהם. And you shall not be led astray, spy out, scout out, look the wrong way, following your heart and mind and your eyes, which will lead you, after which you stray. למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם, that you may recall and perform all of my mitzvot, and you shall be holy to your God. אני אדוני אלוהיכם אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם. I am Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh, your God. I am the one who brought you out from the land of Mitzrayim to become your God. I am Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh, your God.
So this word Latour, right? Lo tatur, right? You shouldn't, this word Latour is from the first few verses and also first without the spy story, about scouting out. And here you should not scout out after your own hearts and your own eyes, which really relates to Alex's point that we can't rely just on our own psyches, our own hearts, even though, we live in a society which always says follow your heart, sort of see what you see and trust it. This is really countercultural in that sense, but it's a higher vision. And Rob, I think this also comes to answer your question, competing with the vision of all God's miracles is the vision and the experience they had as slaves. So which do they see? Which do they trust? Which do they rely on? Is it their own trauma or all these sort of signs of faith? Right. So God, just like after the sin of the golden calf, gives the people something very concrete in the Mishkan, in the tabernacle. Here, God's giving them an instruction, right, that relies on something very concrete. Look at this and remember, it's not all about what you think in your mind. Right? We get so caught up in our own minds and our own thinking loops. And this is inviting us to go beyond that, which is in a way impossible, but in a way possible.
Proverbs, right? Lean not on your own understanding.
Lean not on your right. Right. Assume that there's a greater understanding that you might not have access to, which might actually ironically open the door to a greater understanding. Okay. I'm not taking people who've already spoken. I'm sorry. Asher Chaim.
I'm sorry, I just can't resist. Don't stray after your own eyes recalls the line by Groucho Marx. Who are you going to believe, me or your own lying eyes?
Great. Okay, so look at this Sforno, right? Who says, so you were reminded that you are God's servants whose commanded you have accepted, reinforced by oaths known as Allah and Shu'ah. This reminder will be due to your looking at the fringes that may be viewed as if their king had placed a stamp on your bodies, confirming that the wearer is one of God's subjects. So that when we wear this tzitzit, we're reminded that we are created in the image of God. The royal stamp is on us. And we forget that again and again, and we feel like grasshoppers in the worst sense of the word, not the best. Okay, so, and again, these tzitzit are a sign of royalty. It's a conscious attempt by the Torah to encourage all Israelites, or at least all the men, to aspire to a degree of holiness comparable to that of priests. The fact that the cord is woolen and blue marks it as a symbol of both priesthood and royalty, thereby epitomizing the divine imperative that Israel become a priestly royalty and a holy nation. So it's egalitarian in its royalty, right? Because this is, and now has become a more universal mitzvah. For the liberal movements, also women are commanded to wear tzitzit.
Diane, do you feel that it was necessary to kill everyone that killed the entire nation in order to establish a beautiful new way of life?
Do I feel it was necessary to kill the entire nation? I feel it was necessary for the people of Israel to find a new consciousness so that they could sort of embody the promise. Embody the promise, the divine promise. Yeah. I'm gonna go on because we're almost done with time. I'm sorry. And there's a couple of things I just want to end with. Rachel Annisfeld, I'm sorry, Rachel. Okay. So the reason this is all connected to Pride Shabbat, in my mind, is that we forget sometimes that we're all created as royalty in the image of God. And that for one reason or another, certain groups in society are not valued like us. And, you know, you could say the mitzvah b'sifit is all about pride, right? About remembering your value, no matter how society treats you and says, you know, tells you who you are, right? And that sort of greater consciousness. So, does someone want to read number 17 from Rachel Anisfeld? Online or in the room?
I'll read.
Okay.
Know your own value.
This betil techelet.
This betil techelet.
Like the blue fringe.
From the heavens. Represents our divine essence. The divine is planted inside us. Made up of many strands and threads. Our essence is this one central betil techelet. Single blue thread of its divine essence. When we lose ourselves in comparison and ambition, what we are forgetting is that there can be no comparisons among divine essences. We each remember our true value, our true light, not earned, but always already there. Maybe you can feel the tug of that divine thread of blue inside you, like a cord of connection, pulling you into alignment with the blue heavens above, with the divine inside yourself.
Your own true blue essence. Yeah, I'll just pick it up. From this place, comparisons with others make no sense. The world's ladder of silver and gold are a mirage, not ultimate reality. All sitting on the ground together, each with our own blue thread. See a field of bright colored flowers, and your flower and my flower are blooming among them. They each stand tall, plenty of room for each to shine. They cannot be compared. They are each simply stunning. Lo taturu, don't compare. Know your own value. You're neither a grasshopper nor a giant. You're each a whole world into yourselves. How hard is that to hold on to in the face of a society which really does compare, right? And we really do despair, and it really does value some people and not others. Okay, and finally, Mary Oliver, The Journey. Do you want to read that?
Sure, I love Mary Oliver.
Okay.
One day you finally knew what you had to do and began, though the voices around you kept shouting their bad advice, though the whole house began to tremble and you felt the old tug at your ankles. Mend my life. Oh, mend my life, each voice cried. But you didn't stop. You knew what you had to do, though the wind pried with its stiff fingers at the very foundations, though their melancholy was terrible. It was already late enough, and a wild night, and the road full of fallen branches and stones. But little by little, as you left their voice behind, the stars began to burn through their sheets of clouds, and there was a new voice, which you slowly recognized as your own, that kept you company as you strode deeper and deeper into the world, determined to do the only thing you could do, determined to save the only life that you could save.
All right, so some thoughts on the journey forward and sort of really expanding our consciousness into a consciousness that includes faith in something larger than ourselves, whether it's the collective or something divine, or, you know, for those that have a connection directly to God, or to some sense of God. You know, what a struggle, because it's so easy to revert back into the smallness. God bless us all this Shabbat and going forward in these really eminently challenging times, that we keep this in mind, that perhaps together we are not grasshoppers, or maybe we are in the sense that Tomas suggested, that we can leap higher and make leaps of faith. Hope to see you in
Thank you so much. Thank you.